Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast. Thanks for joining me today from here at the Breakers in West Palm Beach, Florida. It's great to be with you. Got so much to cover today. Have a lot of specific Raider information and a lot of NFL. Let's start first with something I've been reporting about for several months. Uh, and that was the tush push up until even the middle of last week. I told you there that everybody that I spoke to, almost, I'd say 85%, 90%, uh, were not in favor of getting rid of the tush push. And then last week, I began to tell you that late in the week that there were some very powerful owners pushing hard to try to get it overturned. Well, literally just a few moments ago, the NFL tabled it for 5 or 6 weeks into May. Um, it tells you the power of these owners that want it gone. A lot of people don't. The majority don't. So here is what I was told by someone who is directly involved and part of a franchise that doesn't want the tush push removed. This is the text that they send me. I'm going to read it to you directly. Hondo, it's going to be tabled until next month at the earliest. Half the people wanted to get rid of it, half didn't. There's not enough votes for it at this moment. I responded with, I appreciate that. Now, by the way, Jordan Schultz has now reported specifically that there was 16 teams that were against the tush. This person said half, so which is 16 was the half, but it wasn't a specific number. So credit to Jordan. I responded to, do you think it's dead? His response, against this powerful block, I wouldn't say it's dead. It can, however, be rewritten, relooked at. I don't think it's dead. This is a person that wants the tush push to stay, but doesn't think the ban is dead. Then okay, so sorry, just got another email while we're talking. So that's the latest on the tush push. It has not been overturned. They're going to come back to it next month. People that I know which are most of the people that are strong proponents of it, don't think this was a win for those that want to keep it, and that it's going against such a powerful block that something's going to happen. So there you go with that. All right. Overtime rules have changed. It's gone from 15 minutes to 10 minutes, but both teams will get to touch the football. Postseason seeding, which you may remember was introduced by the Lions, changing the seeding in the postseason. That is tabled. There's going to be 3 games now on Christmas, which I think is hilarious. It's the NFL making a statement to the NBA. The first 2 are going to be on Netflix. The third one, the night game, will be on Amazon. I'm going to get to the Cowboys and Micah Parsons, something I learned today, but I'll get back to you in that in a minute. On kickoffs now, if the ball gets kicked into the end zone by the kicking team, it's going to go to the 35-yard line. Again, they're trying to up the percentage of kick returns, which is fine. Micah, the Cowboys, according to someone not in the Cowboy organization, but close to Micah, told me last night that they've made him an offer to make him the highest non-paid quarterback in the NFL. I want to discuss this for a minute because there's a Raider implication here. You may remember just a few short weeks ago, Max Crosby signed the deal, and at that time was the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. And I shared with you, and by the way, if you didn't see my interview with with a select few of us, this interview with John Spytek yesterday, please go back and watch that, because I mentioned this to him. Both Ziegler and Telesco were fired before they could extend Max. They wanted to. or he would be even cheaper for the Raiders today. But just since the Raiders were proactive and got Max done, now I think there's 4 or 5 guys paid more than him. Imagine if they'd paid him a year earlier. He would have been thrilled, but it still would have even saved him more money. So I think it's interesting. Here are the Cowboys again. They just, in my opinion, just woefully not managed very well. But to each their own, we'll certainly find out. But I'm putting it in perspective so you understand now. I mentioned on yesterday's broadcast about how Spytek wants to know the people he's signing and bringing in, which is what Telesco and Ziegler did. It's why nothing got done with Spills or even Max. And they move on. And now Micah, just another person, it makes the signing of Max and doing it early look very smart. And it was, and very good for the franchise. All right. I want to touch on a couple of things. I had several people email wanting to know what happened to the John Spytek video, because in the middle, it goes from video to dark, but the video is still going, to just standard audio. Here's what happened, because evidently it happened right around the Hunter Renfrow discussion. Was the lights were turned off, and then the hotel told everybody, you're not allowed to tape inside our facility. So we had to switch to audio. There's nothing trying to edit anything out that John said. There was no secrets. It was literally a hotel decision. They don't let people film inside the breakers here in West Palm Beach, which is amazing because there's filming going on everywhere, but it's just all done outside, and their rules. So you live by it. That's all. I wanted to address that really quick. All right. If you go back to the Super Bowl, you may remember that I reported about the Raiders were very interested in a trade. And you saw what happened with the attempt with Matthew Stafford. You saw what happened with Geno Smith. Now, yesterday, John Spytek discussed, they want to be intelligent but aggressive. I've been reporting that the Raiders, you may remember I talked to you about the fact they were trying to trade for a running back, and word kind of leaked and eventually got out. It was Kenneth Walker. There was another one as well that hasn't leaked, so we'll leave that off the table. But they're being aggressive. So last night they have an off the record party for the media, the owners, the general managers, and the coach and the head coaches. And nothing there that on the record, but in talking to several people, and I talked to just about everybody, but it's a very big event, great event, by the way. Had a great visit with Guy Fieri from Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. Big, huge Raider fan. You're going to see more of him coming up here pretty soon. But got to talk to tons of coaches, general managers, some AGMs, some other executives, owners. But it's off the record, so I won't be sharing any of that specific. But as I was asking people specifically about, Raiders, what are your thoughts? It was interesting to me the amount of information I got on Spytek kicking tires on trades. I still believe, unless there is a couple of select players at 6, the Raiders just would prefer to trade down. Again, I think there's a couple of people that they would take. I think 3 is probably fair for me to say. 2 for sure. I think probably 3. I'm sure after the fact they would, but that depends on what somebody's willing to trade. And, let's just assume there were 2 guys, and I know there are 2 guys that I believe 100% they would take and never look back. So they're sitting there and there's a 3rd guy and they think, oh, this guy's got a grade of X. Well, if somebody's offering them Y, they may say, okay, it's too high at 6, but what they're offering isn't compatible. We'll take this guy at 6. I think there's 2, maybe 3 guys that they would like to get at 6. And if those guys weren't available, I think they would trade back. If two of them were there, I don't believe they would trade at all. Um, if three of them were there, I think there's a good chance they would take the pick. But so right now, as it looks, I think that there's a very good chance that the Raiders would like to trade. But what if somebody's not willing to pay what they want? So they take their fourth choice. I mean, they're not going to say, "Yeah, we didn't want this guy." But I expect that aggression to continue. I don't think the Raiders are dead at all on trades, and I want to make that really clear. Now, that doesn't mean a trade's going to come about, but it also doesn't mean that they won't. Um, and I think that's very interesting. So that's something we're going to keep our eyes on, the amount of NFL people talking to me about the Raiders' interest in trades. And I do want to share one funny thing with you. And because it's off the record, I'm not going to share anything that Pete Carroll and his wife and I laughed about last night. But uh, as I told you yesterday in the podcast, my first question for Pete yesterday, I called him Pat, which was just stupid. Obviously, I know who he is. And totally, I could have edited it out of the video, but that's not the way I operate. I said it, I screwed up, I'll be accountable for it. And I walked right up to him and I said, "How you doing, Pat?" He cracked up laughing, and I apologized to him because I felt terrible. But I just um, I, I am impressed with Pete Carroll for a number of reasons, and I want to start by the humility. And this has nothing to do with my comment yesterday, but that he has brought and the way he talks about people. So last night I had an NFL executive tell me, he goes, "I know you're a big spy tech guy, of which you all know that." And I said, "Yep." And he said to me, he goes, "You want to know what I think is really cool?" And I said, "What?" And he starts telling me things that Pete has bragged about spy tech with him. Now this guy and Pete know each other. I I think they have a friendly relationship. I don't know that they're friends, but it's certainly friendly. And he goes, "Yeah, he's been raving about him. And he's really impressed with how smart he is." And again, Pete Carroll's Pete freaking Carroll. He's a Hall of Famer. His credentials speak for itself. His resume speaks for itself. And yet he's out here preaching the brand, building Spy Tech up, talking about how smart he is. I heard the same story from two different people about him bragging about something specifically that Spy Tech did. Because the meeting was off the record, I don't think I can share with you what it was, but just um, him bragging about Spy Tech. And I think it just continues to convince me about the right direction that the Raiders are moving. Let's be honest. Nice guys can finish last or first. We're not looking for Sunday school teachers. We're looking for football people. But there is something that you find among certain people. And I've always told you I root for good people. And I think you're seeing now in the Raiders some fascinating developments as this entire organization resets and gets on the same page. I can tell you that in the past 5 years that I've covered this team, there were times when they were, not every time, but there were several times this group was not on the same page. I knew there was frustration last year among many coaches in Luke Getzey. Okay. And I think a lot of it was warranted, but it was still evident. I've been on teams before where one side of the football wasn't succeeding. I say been covering, and the entire team's doing everything to pick them up. I remember one particular team where the offense just could not score, just literally couldn't score. And the defense would say, it was our fault. We're not putting them in better positions. And the cameras would go off or the recorders. And you look at them like, are you nuts? No, no, come on. These are our guys. These are our brothers. And, that was not the case last year with Luke Getzey. There was a lot of animus and anger. And what you're seeing, and it has been there at other times too, There have been times that this defense would do a very good job and the offense could do nothing, or a quarterback would have fumbling issues or interception issues. And but that to me, what you're seeing with Pete, that's very impressive to me. And the fact that Spytek's a first year guy, I know a seasoned coach, not with Pete's credentials, who one time got a job. He was hired but he was a seasoned coach by a general manager. And then literally a couple months afterwards at owners meetings, he's trashing his general manager and anyone to listen. Oh yeah, I've got Big Daddy Warbucks as my, or not, oh, the Ricky Schrader show. I don't remember. Ricky Schrader was this little kid. Oh, Richie Rich. And he goes, "Oh yeah, I got Richie Rich as my general manager." And I remember thinking, this general manager just hired you. You were fired for a reason. And I remember thinking to myself at the NFL meeting, boy, well, that guy's classless. And so it was just interesting to me. And I thought you would find that extremely interesting, the way Pete Carroll has been talking about the organization. Now let's flip it. John Spytek brings some things to this table that I think a lot of people are going to miss. Tom Brady, whether you hated him as a player because he was a Patriot, tuck rule, all that kind of stuff, but Tom Brady is driven. He's got a generational drive that the best ones have, but he has a quality that some of those guys don't. And that's, if you earn his respect, he will listen to you. Okay, everybody knows Brady and Belichick were not best friends. That's the reality. But one thing, and Belichick would tell you this, by the way, and so would pretty much all the players in New England, even though they knew that Belichick and Brady were not best friends, everyone respected the way Brady listened to Belichick. They may not have been best friends, but Brady respected Belichick. And so Brady does not suffer fools. Don't try to woo him and wow him with your brain. Either you know stuff or you don't. Well, one advantage of a guy like that is he's driven. He's a 2%er. He's just a driven guy. And Spytek, because of the fact they were friends in college, played ball together, and over his career, I mean, Spytek basically ran Tampa. And that's not fake. I was on a Tampa radio show yesterday, and they wanted to talk about Spytek, and I said, "You guys know better than anyone else. I mean, your general manager literally pretty much let him do most of the work." And people in the organization told me that, and part of the organization told me that. I'm sure they probably don't want that out there, but it's reality. And so Spytek comes along, and he's got Brady's ear and Brady's respect. In one area, and I'm going to be exploring and writing about this a lot more coming up here before training camp. But one of the things that I greatly respect and admire is that not only is Spytek not afraid to stand up to Tom, Tom isn't so egomaniacal that he won't listen. And they've had disagreements even since they've been here in Vegas, or since Spytek's been here. And you know what? There are times Tom says, "No, this is what we're doing," and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with the boss being the boss. But he listens to Pete and he listens to Spytek. And so what I think is, if the three of these guys got together and it was Tom dictating everything, I wouldn't think that would be good, because nobody's right all the time. But what you're seeing is Tom saying, "This is the direction I want to go." Pete and Spytek are completely on board. But yet, since they're the one doing the coaching and in general managing, Tom is listening to them when they say, "Hey, we think we need to take this way on the map." And he's listening and asking questions. I was told yesterday by someone in the organization that he is a major question asker. and he wants to know why. And I shared this story with you when Spytech was the AGM in Tampa. Tom wanted extra scouting materials, and so literally Spytech would bring him tons of it, and he would want more. So Tom is listening, and I think that's healthy for the organization. Josh McDaniels, and again, Mark Davis said that it wasn't the case with him, but if Ziegler didn't know that, that's on Ziegler, and I agree because Ziegler didn't know. But Josh McDaniels did what Josh McDaniels wanted. Um, John Gruden did what John Gruden wanted, and so Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco, I think, Telesco inherited him, and so I think he let him do a lot because he was hired before him. But and Antonio would listen to Tom Telesco, by the way, but I and they had a good relationship. But it's not like you see here with Pete, Spytech, and Brady. And so I think that's fascinating that not only can Spytech or Pete talk to Tom, Tom listens to them both. And that's a very big deal. And I think it's set the Raiders up to succeed, especially now we go back to that aggressive but intelligent. And the Raiders are still kicking tires on trades. Um, I mentioned yesterday, I think Michael Mayer would be available, but the Raiders aren't shopping. I've been telling you that for a while. The Raiders are not shopping him. Would they listen? Of course they would. And I think they would listen to just about anybody on this roster for trade other than Max Crosby. Anyone would be there. I mean, Adam Butler was a significant must re-sign for them. They were able to do it. Some others weren't, but they moved on and they're fine with it. A couple of positions. Again, I think running back, wide receiver, corner, running back, wide receiver, corner, and corner, maybe an offensive lineman. I think are still in play for potential trades. That doesn't mean one's going to happen, but it still means they're looking at every direction and how do we address it. And those are just some of the positions. There's one other position I've heard about, but I'm not going to mention it because I think it could hurt the Raiders if it were known what I had heard they'd called on a trade. Those are already pretty obvious. But there's one other position I heard that they did make an inquiry on a trade. I want to talk about the Raiders' safety. I think they are very excited about Isaiah Palomau and Jeremy Chin. Very excited. Raiders have some youth there. They have some youth at linebacker now that needs to make some steps up. But one name that I think people are really watching to see what happens is Amari Gaynor, the linebacker. What's he going to do? I mean, he has all the physical tools. And you know what? He's past his rookie year now, so you can start to expect. Again, remember my rule. I don't have huge expectations for rookies. I do in year 2 start applying more, and then year 3 is the money year. But I think those are the interesting things right now, looking at their intelligent but aggressive approach. They're going to stay aggressive. I think that they would absolutely move up for one of the two guys if they felt they could get them and the cost was not too high. I think they would absolutely stay there for 3, 2 for sure, maybe a third guy if the offer wasn't high enough. But I think they would love to trade back and accumulate and get more picks. And as deep as this draft is, whew, I heard someone email me and say, but what about trading, getting more picks for next year? Okay, that's fine. But what if you don't anticipate next year's draft being as deep as this one? So let me give you an example. I think there's a 2 in this year's draft is as valuable as some ones in drafts that aren't deep. There's a lot of talent in this draft, not quarterback talent, but there's a lot of talent in this draft. And I think it's interesting. All right, talk a little bit. I'm going to grab my phone here because I want to read some notes from last night. Um, I want to grab because these are some notes that I obviously can't tell you where they're from, but I can talk to you about them. So please bear with me for 1 second as I pull these up. These are notes as I was talking to people and things that they were sharing. I asked their permission and they said, sure. So let me talk about a couple things. Travis Hunter, a lot of people think generational talent has that up. Again, I don't have for me to call somebody a dude. 75% of the people I talk to have to call them that. I don't get that 75%. Close, but not there. But Travis Hunter, on a few people I noticed last night, um, how would I say it? They all think he's a top 5 guy, but the way that people are hearing the draft may go, uh, there is a shot he gets out of the top 5. It's a slim shot. So please, I'm not, don't somebody run off. Hondo says that Travis is out of the top 5. No, but I asked multiple people, what do you think's going to happen with Hunter? And several told me, he's a top 5 guy in this draft, but the way I kind of think this draft's going, he could slip out of 5. So I think it's something worth discussing. Um, uh, Again, multiple people I spoke to last night, and I talked to a ton, all started talking about they could see 3 uh, quarterbacks in that top 5. That's fascinating to me. When everyone that I respect tells me only 2 quarterbacks have a first round grade, and one of them's in the top half of the second half, so in that 50 to 75% range, and one of them's in the 75 to the bottom quarter. But again, a lot of people think 3 could go. Doesn't mean they will, but a lot of people think 3 could go. Um, Now, here's something that I found interesting is I had 2 executives tell me last night uh, that Travis Hunter is not their number 1 corner or wide receiver. I find that interesting. Now, they're not people who would be in a position to pick them. So, and they're people that I've known a long time and trust. So I don't think they're, blowing smoke. They're too far down. But one of them said to me when I was asking about Travis, he goes, we don't have him as a number 1 corner or wide receiver. So, there's a chance if 3 quarterbacks go, he could slip. Now, everyone thinks the Patriots love him. I did not get that from Patriot people, but that's what people think. So, anyways, we're gonna watch that closely. Um, and one other thing that I found interesting about Travis is he is kind of the wild card in this because he's so talented, both sides of the ball. But I think there is a sentiment that his insistence on playing both has scared some people. They don't want to take the noise of um, what if he's playing corner and they lose a game and all of a sudden now here comes the criticism. Why don't you play him at wide receiver? So you play him at wide receiver. I mean, you physically can't. I know nobody believes this, but you could. Well, he did in college. College ain't the NFL. You can't play at that level. You simply cannot play at that level. for both sides of the game. It's just physically, everyone said to me physically impossible. In fact, I was talking to a quarterback, a very famous quarterback, doesn't play anymore, that's here. And I asked him, I was telling him, he goes, what are you hearing? I was telling him the Travis Hunter stuff I just told you. And I said, and people are kind of concerned because he wants to play both. And he looked at me and he said, it is physically impossible. No one can play both sides for an entire game in the NFL, period. I said, all right. And he goes, I know we're at a off the record meeting. So next year, if he plays the entire year both ways, you can name me. And I said, well, I can't because it's here. He goes, well, then get me on your podcast. I said, all right, I will. But so that's scaring a few people, which I just thought you'd find that interesting. Now, here is another one. I asked a team that definitely could be interested in Travis and as a corner. And I just said, what are your thoughts on Travis? And they said, great athlete. They were the first to mention last night the concern about being so vocal about playing both. And he says, but between you and I asked him if I could, as long as I didn't identify who he was, he goes, we've got Will Johnson as a better corner than him. So take that for whatever you want. But I did hear that twice last night from people that think Will Johnson is a better corner than Travis Hunter. I'm going to also tell you there's a surprise wide receiver coming up in this draft. And I want to talk to two more people today, but I tomorrow may want to talk to you about a wide receiver that is getting some interesting feedback. Just throw that out there. Now, here's another corner that I think is not getting a lot of play, but Jabbar Muhammad is a guy that you're going to want to think about. A lot of people brought him up to me last night. In 2023, he basically played a stalemate. This is a guy that's a real go get the ball kind of guy. Now, I want to make this clear. Nobody thinks he's Deion Sanders. I'm not saying anyone does, but they do think he's a ball hawk like Deion. And that's a guy that I've heard that the Raiders have had some interested in. So I'm just throwing that out there for you. I'm trying to go through my notes. I apologize here. Here's an interesting one. I talked with three guys. We were just standing there together from three different teams. And I brought up the defensive tackles. Think about this one. This guy told me this. 23 combine had like 25 defensive tackles invited. And he's like, there was over 40 this year. And he goes, there is a ton of defensive tackle talent in this class. Now, he told me, he goes, Mason is clearly number one. Clearly number one. But he said, there still is a lot of really good talent. And so, again, I'm just trying to throw out everything that I'm hearing from this draft. Again, the Raiders not done with trades. Or let me rephrase that, because somebody's got to be willing to trade. They're not done exploring that. They are being extremely aggressive. I do know there's a couple of free agents that they're still working on, but they're being smart, trying to piece the roster together and to make it flexible so Spytek doesn't have to show his hand at anything. I think when I can tell you this. So I had a person say to me last night, he said, John Spytek will never be happy in any draft where everyone knows what he's going to do, because he wants to keep all options open. But at the end of the day, they love the lines, running backs, toughness guys. So you may say, well, then that means they wouldn't take this position or that position. There's more skill. They're not toughness. No, they want guys who are going to play toughness. But remember, Cody Mock, the kid out of North Dakota State, a couple years ago, this was a guy the Raiders loved him last year. 2 years ago, Kalijah Cansey, the defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh. Both guys booming and playing well in Tampa, where Spy was. So, I'm going to give you a name that I know the Raiders love. I know he's going to go in the first round. So if the Raiders were to trade back, and get to a lower level, I could see them taking a Noble Gray and celebrating it. So even though they're happy where the offensive line is right now, I told you yesterday, just because they're happy with it doesn't mean I expect them to pick in the draft offensive linemen every year, because you never have enough, ever. You constantly want to upgrade. But I've been talking to you since the Senior Bowl about Noble Gray. I know that they really like him. I know they love Jalen Walker. There are several guys I think they really like. But depending on how far back they trade, just keep that name in the back of your head. Noble Gray. He's a versatile offensive lineman, can play all 5 positions. And if you go back and look, we have video up of him at the combine talking about the Raiders, talking about his skill set. So just remember that. Again, that's a name a lot of people. I don't even know last night. It was over 5. Probably, I would guess, probably 7 people said to me, Noble Gray, man, that's a spy tech type of player. And I can confirm to you, because I've been telling you since the Senior Bowl, the Raiders love him. That's a guy. I don't think he's in play at all at 6. But that's a guy, if there's a trade back, keep your eye on him. Lastly, I mentioned this briefly, but it was confirmed to me last night in a very big way. There are 4 running backs in this draft that I expect to go in the first round. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty, he's just special. Omarion Hampton, special. Is he Jeanty? No. But he's still very, very special. That's like saying, it is, well, it doesn't matter, but very, very special. And so you just kind of watch how that happens. Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, special guy. Is he Jeanty? No. Is he Omarion Hampton? I think he's close. I think I'd give the edge to Omarion, but I know some people that give the edge to Caleb. And then Travian Henderson. Those are 4 guys with first round grades. And I will be surprised. Now, if 5 or 6 quarterbacks go in the first round, oh, good night, Irene. That's where you see good guys dropping out. But just keep your eye on that, because there are 4 guys with top 20 grades. If the Raiders were to come away with any of those, and there are other good ones. But if one of those guys falls to the Raiders' first pick in the second, dear Lord Almighty, that is absolutely Christmas in April for the Raiders. Today's Tuesday, so what are we? We're 23 days away from the draft. That's kind of exciting for you and for all of us. Then, of course, we get kicking in. And, lastly, training camp. So Vic Tafer, my good buddy from The Athletic, reported it first about training camp in Tampa. I was able to confirm last night that it's probably going to be in Henderson. It's not 100%, but probably. It wasn't that Pete lied or anything else. It was just they were looking at it. Pete knew they were looking at it, and he didn't realize that it was not done when he talked about it publicly. So, but I would say there's a very good chance, not 100%, but a very good chance it's going to be in Henderson again this year, which is, was so nice having it in Costa Mesa last year. The weather was perfect, but who cares? And Vegas is good for the team, and it's, fans get to go, which is good for the fans. So Thanks for joining me here. That's your day 2 owners meeting update. I appreciate all of you taking the time to join me. Have a wonderful day and God bless all y'all.